Hey guys, thanks for watching. We have Adrienne Barnes here, who's going to be talking with me about happiness as a freelancer and solopreneur. This conversation was sort of kickstarted with a tweet that Adrienne posted about sort of when she focuses specifically on achieving happiness, it tends to not result in a positive outcome on the happiness end. And it got me thinking about how many of the things I've done specifically to increase happiness in my own life have worked out very favorably. And so I was kind of thinking like, man, everyone's different and everyone approaches life and happiness. And also I think delayed gratification and what working on something both in the short term and long term mean. So I wanted to bring her on so we could talk about finding happiness as a freelancer and how that is so different for each of us. And Adrienne is a solopreneur, a content marketer specializing in helping companies create buyer personas. So she's been in the solopreneur space for quite a while and is very experienced on this topic. So thanks for joining, Adrienne. Great to have you.
Jacob. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. And kind of digging right into that. I'm curious kind of just for that tweet specifically, was there a specific sort of moment that you were having this week and thinking of happiness that sort of prompted that tweet? And can you share about that a little bit?
Yeah, there was. So I had just finished Think Again by Adam Grant. And now that I'm a week out, trying to remember exactly what chapter it was in. It was the very end, maybe chapter 11, chapter 10. And his research showed, the research and the studies he found, is that when people strive for happiness or to be happy and are very focused on this is going to make me happy, or I need to be happy and these are the steps I need to take to be happy, they actually end up miserable. And then the study found that, it actually, those people are less happy. They're more frustrated because their quantifier is arbitrary and fleeting. And it just reminded me of a time in my own life when I'll tell the whole story. So I was very young, 19, 20. And I decided that my New Year's resolution that year was to do whatever it took to make me happy. And so it was very selfish. It was very like, I don't care who is in the wake or what happens. It's all about me. I'm going to make me happy. That year was awful. Like personally, professionally, relationship wise, everything, not just like, it's still to this day. And I've had like 3 children and we've gone through deaths and multiple different kinds of things, is one of the worst years of my life still. Wow. Yeah. So that really became this moment of like, okay, for me personally, to find happiness is not about serving myself. When I find happiness, it's really about serving others and being able to try to find a better way to not make it so self-centric.
Absolutely. And kind of to unpack that a little bit, when you had that idea of, hey, I'm going to make myself happy this year, what kind of, in terms of like, the nuts and bolts, as we're entrepreneurs, we know like, hey, you have a business goal, you put that into maybe a defined plan. What did sort of the nuts and bolts of that look like to you when you're like, hey, I'm going to be happy? What were sort of the goals involved there? Maybe the sub goals that you thought would make you happier? And what were the actions that you were taking to sort of pursue that happiness?
Yeah. So that direct example was before I had a business, but I've done it multiple times, even once I started a business. And for me, and I want to keep saying for me, like this is a very personal kind of experience. So this is not necessarily a good general broad advice that everybody can apply to their life. But for me, when I'm applying, I want to be happy to my business. It's money, right? When I think, oh, I want to make $15,000 a month and or $20,000 a month, and I'm going to, do this and this and this to get it. What ends up happening is I end up saying yes to way too many projects. I end up approving and bringing on poor fit clients that make me miserable, that make them miserable. When I'm thinking, I really just, if I have this amount of money, right, I will be successful. I will be happy in my business. And that has yet to work out for me. So I've also had to shift the goal from, I can't say I want to make this much money a month because that doesn't work. I have to say, I want to serve like when I think of really goal planning and how it's going to fulfill what I actually want to do and then be a good fit at the end, I want to actually serve like 3 to 4 really good, perfect fit clients who think that I'm amazing, who love everything I do. I know that's very like, okay, keep dreaming, Adrienne, but that's what I like. I want clients who just think that, my work is amazing.
Totally.
And yeah, and that fit with my like morals in a way, just the values essentially. Like they have this similar values. They agree that it's a good idea to know your customers and they serve those customers well. Once I've shifted my business goals more towards that level, the happiness tends to happen. Like it tends to fall in place rather than, trying to search for a dollar amount or something like that.
Totally. And kind of going back to pre-business with the goal to be happy. What were some of the goals, sort of the more life goals maybe, or the non-business goals that you thought, hey, this is going to make me happy, and then it sort of turned out to either the achievement of that or the pursuit of that did not actually make you happy?
Yeah. So I guess a little bit of background and context too is I am a very goal-oriented person. So when I establish a goal, I'm serious about meeting it. Like I create action plans. I work towards it. It's one of those things. It's like always in the back of my head. Is this going to be a decision that gets me towards this goal?
Yeah.
So sometimes that's exhausting. Like really just being inside my own head can be very tiring. So I have to be really careful about saying in my personal life and in my business, like this is what I want to achieve, because I will basically destroy things at all costs to get there.
Mm.
So meaning if maybe it's a personal goal and I'm trying to work towards something, it could eliminate, friendships or other kinds of relationships, or it could harm or stress those things at times. So I have to be mindful of how I establish my goals and how I choose to work towards them. Because for me, achieving a goal is happiness. Like that is
Okay.
the cream of the crop, the best of the best. I feel most fulfilled, most worthy, quote unquote, like really does bring it adds for me a sense of value, which also I should work on. That's definitely not a trait that I would say go after that. Like we should be able to separate ourselves from our goals, but it does. When achieving a goal is something that just like lights me up and just fulfills me, which is why I have to be very careful about the goals that I set and achieve.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's like I'm sort of connecting the dots on why for me going after happiness has been more of a positive thing, and I think it's because what you said there at the end, for you the fulfillment of the goal is a big part of that feeling of happiness. And for me, for whatever reason, whenever I've thought about trying to make myself happier, it's always more manifested as thinking about what aspects of my day-to-day life I don't like that I
Mm,
want to improve. And that's kind of how I approach, hey, to me, happiness is a little more of like, am I enjoying my routine? Am I enjoying my day-to-day life? Are there aspects of my day-to-day life that are unfulfilling, or that are, kind of escalating and the unhappiness they are causing me over time? And so for me, there's really, when I think about making myself happier, or when I think about pursuing, intentionally trying to make myself
yeah.
happier, um, I don't associate that with like longer term goals as much. It's more of like more of that day to day, like what is something, my daily life is in my past experience, like milestones don't really change day to day life, for me. Again, just as you said,
Yeah.
very personally for me, like if I hit any sort of like milestone or goal, I get like a little bit of a dopamine rush, but tomorrow I wake up and my routine stays the same. And so
Yeah.
I kind of associate happiness with routine. And I'm curious kind of on that end, because I could definitely see where the goal setting, if the goal itself is what provides the fulfillment, then obviously, yeah, definitely setting a goal like happiness, like that'd be kind of like, what are the metrics for that? Like then
Yeah.
it's kind of like I could like that'd be tough to hit. But I'm curious how how the day-to-day process affects your goal setting, affects like, how does that, obviously we have different personalities. When you think of day-to-day and how it connects to happiness, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I love that you frame it that way, because that does add a different shift to it. If I think of it the way that you framed it, for me, that really does mean, like space, some breathing room, time with kids. I have 3 children that we homeschool, and so when
Wow.
yes, and I work and run the business, and
Yep.
so when the days that the routine or the schedule is tight or unexpected. I'm also very naturally routine, and my kids kind of are too. We all kind of get up at the same time and run our day very similar each day. Those are some of the best days. But in my daily just routine, if I were to really consider like how can we incorporate happiness into each aspect of this, actually this reply, so I've been working on this. Now that we're talking about it, I'm recalling some things. I read a book probably 3 or 4 months ago called Hardwiring Happiness, and it was about how to just feel happier in your every single day. And it's not about finding huge moments, right? Or like in my natural ability to achieve the goal, the final goal ending, like, yay, that's what happiness is. It's really finding a small moment, a tiny little thing, and then sitting and appreciating it and like letting it, the book says, let the happiness, let the thought like wash over your body for a while, like sit in that moment, in that thought for 30 seconds. And 30 seconds doesn't seem very long, but when we're living our lives and going on, we'll be like, oh, that was pretty, and then never think about it again. Oh, my rose is blooming, like, oh, that's cute. But actually like look at the rose and see it, and then allow it's really rewiring your brain to be happier faster and more often, for that to be your initial response.
Yeah.
And if you can train yourself to see the beauty in the mundane, essentially, it will actually lead to more happiness throughout your everyday life, rather than where my current struggle is finding it in the big moments, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
trying to practice finding it in the simple and the daily.
Totally. So kind of meditating on just the normal moments that make up life that we often don't really take notice of.
Yeah. Yeah. Like my kids say thank you to each other, or the 6-year-old came in and like just
Yes.
before we started recording was like, Mom, I love you. Can I have a hug and kiss? And those moments where it's like, yes, but go, like I'm about to do this thing. Now I need to stop and be like, wait, he's like, he's 6. How often is he going to come in and need a hug and kiss before, like he still wants to go off and play with his toys? Not very often. So I have to like pause and hold those moments.
Totally. And kind of so as I mentioned a little bit ago, to me, when I think of happiness, I kind of think of more just like feeling fulfilled in my day-to-day life. I'm curious with goals, like I think I do, there's a part of me that would like to maybe have like hitting certain goals and milestones translate into a larger sense of fulfillment and happiness. My concern in thinking about like what if that's kind of how I was wired is, especially when we talk about big goals, you kind of only, achievement is kind of a momentary thing, like
Mhm.
when you have a big milestone, when you hit a big number, when you're, when you have something that for the last 10 years was an idea that is now a reality, it's huge. But it's also kind of a point on a line, like
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the line itself. So I'm curious in that, are there things that like, are there aspects of, are there aspects of kind of how you approach your business and life that really allow you to get a lot of mileage out of the happiness you get from these milestones and these achievements, that kind of let it carry and stay with you beyond just the moment of achievement?
Yeah, I try to. I mean, it's not perfect, but I try to
Totally.
break up a larger goal into smaller little bites. So
Yeah.
that way, when that small bite does come, and you can appreciate, and they say this, I think it's really hard as a solopreneur because there's nobody else going, hey, you did that, stop. that was good. Like,
Yep.
good for you. You know, when I was a teacher, I would go into other teachers' offices and like there was a win or a kid succeeded, there was something, and they would cheer you on. You know, your other colleagues were there for you. As a solopreneur, I go to Twitter for that. I mean, essentially, if I'm
Totally.
like excited about something, I consider Twitter my colleagues. I'm like, hey guys, this just happened. It's very exciting. I have a few like small DMs, and then there's Slack groups, but you really do need to find, I've probably veered off a little bit, but you need to find, for me at least, just somebody else who can say, take a moment. That's really cool. You just did this thing. My
Yep.
husband knows a little bit, but he doesn't get the lingo and the jargon, and like, you know, he has a job, so his wins are a little bit different. Whereas when you're just out here on your own, like trudging, right, it's really hard to be a solopreneur
Yep.
every day and trying to find a win. Like it seems like there's a roller coaster, and I've been in it long enough now where I've kind of taken the ride a few times, where there will be seasons where things are just amazing. Like clients are coming in, the work is coming in, everybody loves your stuff. Like there's people asking you to speak, and just stuff is going off awesome. And then before you know it, like March 15th, 2020, everything stops, right? Like there's a dry spell there. It's that feast or famine.
Yep.
And so I've ridden the wave long enough now to go, okay, when I'm in the bottom, when there's crickets out there, like it doesn't need to reflect my self-identity, because I think that's where the happiness and unhappiness and depression cycle for solo like freelancers and entrepreneurs, where it can really get to us, where because we are the business, right? Like it's
Yep.
not like we're running a large company or where we're an employee in a company. We are the company. Everything we do, every win and every decision we make is because of us. And so when there's failure, it's hard not to feel like a failure. And when there's successes, it's hard not to just tie it and wrap it up into who you are. I'm still struggling with it. I'm not going to say like, oh, if I lose all my clients and have some dry months, I'm not going to like be miserable. I probably will.
Sure.
But I'm trying to make the cycle shorter, right? Like, so where there's kind of this like despair and, oh, I guess I'm done. I'm never going to be like have another client again. And, you know, just, we used to call it, Margot Aaron told me, it's your lay in bed and eat chocolate cake days. Like that's, I'm trying to shorten the cycle of
Yep.
those days to where we can say, okay, yes, this is not a great spot, but I've got the skills now, I've got the talent now, I've got the network now. Let's ramp it back up and figure out what we're going to do next.
Totally. And I think the community aspect is such a big point, especially when we're talking about happiness. Cause like, you know, I've been doing this 10 years. My wife still doesn't really understand what I do. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like she sort of gets it, but it's like, you know, if I have a very specific, if I have a very business specific win or thing that, you know, like it's, it's very helpful to have people who really understand the context that you can celebrate with, in the same way that, you know, if something goes wrong, it's helpful to have people who really understand the context, who can kind of be there to, you know, be a shoulder to cry on, or, you know,
Yeah.
can eat some cake with you, you know, like whatever it is.
Yes.
And I'm actually really curious on that end too, because you mentioned sort of like Twitter, you know, online community. I'm curious, like what has, as a solopreneur, what has community looked like for you? And, you know, how much do you feel like that connects to your sense of happiness in this business?
I think a lot, really. And it's evolved as my career has.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, you know, when I was really new, I was in newer open communities that were just open to and available to anybody.
Yep.
And I feel like everybody should start there, right? Everyone needs to start in those new communities where you're all asking very newbie questions. And there's maybe a few experts or the leaders of the community that guide through. When you start to realize, wait, we're all asking the same 25 questions, then you've grown out of the community, right? Like
Yep.
now it's time to go find a different one.
Oh,
And
that's a
that
great
moment should
point.
hit you when you're like, wait a second, everybody's been asking. Yeah, that happens. So, you know, sometimes that shifted into a paid community like Slack communities or different things like that. Little mind, what do they call them?
Masterminds.
Masterminds, yes.
Yep.
And so that's a good thing and a good avenue to go as well. Right now, I'm really focusing on just building better relationships on Twitter. I use Twitter a lot. Kaylee Moore was one of the first people I found that said Twitter is a avenue for not just your business, but like your network for personal and professional relationships.
So
Um,
true.
and it's been amazing. So I connect with people on Twitter before I go to a conference. And so we'll start chatting and DMing. And then when they meet me at the conference, it's like, hey, I'm Adrienne. You know me a little bit. Like now you
Yeah.
can put a body and a face and some mannerisms. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing for finding camaraderie, like actual connection for like, hey, this is a hard thing. What are you guys doing about this hard thing? I don't know what to do. And not that you have to put it all out on the main feed, like find people that you are resonating with that are in similar spots as you and do a DM group. We recently did, or I didn't, Corey Haynes did his Twitter growth challenge and he grouped a whole bunch of people together. I think he's a mastermind at Community, Corey Haynes is. It's just absolutely wonderful. I'm in the Swipe Files community as well. But
Awesome.
he grouped a bunch of us together on Twitter and we've been DMing for a month or so. And it's like, these people just get it. Like, even if we're not even talking about Twitter growth anymore. Now we're just talking about personal growth and cheering each other on. It's just amazing. If you come to it genuine, number one, you can't come up like, I'm the guy that knows everything and here's my one quip wonder thing.
Yep.
So, but you got to come at it genuine and give it time. Like, just, you have to give it time. I've had people in the DMs who try to like force a relationship or an interaction that is a little bit early for what I would feel like, like, oh, hey, just share this. And I'm like, that's not we're not there yet. Like, you just knocked on my door and asked to come sit at my table. And I just met you at the grocery store. Like, we're just not there yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a great place for your mental health as a solopreneur. Absolutely. Find a place where people are either 2 years ahead of you. I kind of like to have a couple different groups. One where people are 2 years ahead of me, where I can say, what do I do about this? I'm currently facing this issue. You're the expert here. Can you help me? And one where people are in the exact same spot, because the people who are in the same spot are really going to be able, the ones who are just like, yeah, man, it is a struggle. Like, I get it. The people 2 years ahead of you, they may not be feeling that same pinch you are. They've got their own pinches. Like, and if they're good mentors, they're not going to fool you on that one. They're struggling as well. Everybody has a struggle. And it's helpful to have those different aspects and different communities to lean on.
That's such a great point. And I was actually going to mention the stages and you addressed it perfectly right there. That one of the things that I noticed with a lot of new people coming into the solopreneur space is obviously everyone wants to connect with the visible, like semi niche famous people who everyone knows about, who are kind of putting their success out there. It's understandable. But one thing that's like, I feel like a lot of people overlook is that the best connections you're going to make are going to be with the people at your exact stage who you then grow alongside with, like the people who I'm best friends with in this business. I met them when we were both like newbie freelancers writing for like a few $100 an article, and now now I have my own business. Some of them are like VP of marketing, heads of content, like all of us have grown in different ways and our careers. And now it's like, there's a lot of, even though like when I think of them, I don't think of network leverage. I think of, oh, they're my friend and I can go to them with victories and failures, but they're also, even from like a business standpoint, they're probably the most lucrative potential network levers available because, as you said, we built a genuine relationship over years. We didn't approach each other just looking to, get stuff from each other. And so I think, having that mentality of looking to develop genuine relationships with other solopreneurs at a similar stage is such a big function of both happiness in the short term and also, great friendships, great network connections for the long term.
Absolutely. And that you'll find the longer you stick around, the more clear it is how tiny circles are. I've been thinking about that a lot. So my best
So
friend,
true.
yeah, my best friend, who we have been friends outside of digital world. So my best friend is now the product manager for like Case Study Buddy. Her brother is
Awesome.
the developer, like the lead developer for ConvertKit. My editor worked for ConvertKit, Kiri and Ty. The newsletter guy that helped me like knows the brother from, it's just, you get in the, once you stay around for a while, you're like, oh my gosh, we're all really connected.
Yep.
And so it is formulating a tight community from the beginning. If you're new, is always going to be a good idea. And if you are, what was I? Probably like you're really looking to the future. You're trying to make as many moves as you possibly can. You're probably goal oriented. And so you might be thinking like, well, yeah, these people are fun for now, but like I really want to leverage up and I want to meet the right people and I want to network right. Well, you're actually doing yourself a disservice, because if you are meeting people that you like, that are you're interested in, and that are also trying to create this kind of solopreneur path, you're gonna grow together. And eventually you
Yep.
look around the room and you're like, holy crap, yeah, like you said, we're all, look at us, we made it. Like, this is so cool.
Totally. And I think too, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this. One thing you mentioned with starting out in some of these free groups, there is the aspect of like, if you were to spend a large amount of time trying to connect with people, probably 90% of the people you meet are going to drop out of the solopreneur life over the next like year or two.
Yeah.
Just because it does take a very particular mentality and, and a particularly strong goal drive to succeed, as a solopreneur. So I'm curious, like I've always felt, and again, this may just be my personality, but I've always felt when you're looking to kind of like in that first year, when you're looking to break through some initial milestones, that in some ways it's almost better for the journey to be a little more self-contained, because like watching a bunch of people like fail and ask the same questions over and over like next to you might make you more think this is the normal. This is the normal for even for people who, it can maybe create false expectations or make you lose confidence. And then once you kind of hit that initial like 1 to 2 year, you really kind of push through your own initial growth, then that's like the sweet spot to get out and really start connecting with other people who have kind of hit that first hurdle, prove to themselves that they can do this, and are then really getting serious about growing. I'm curious, in your experience, if you think there's any merit to that, or if you think it's just, you connect with people at whatever stage, even ground zero, and you're going to find, some of the people you connect with are going to continue to grow.
Yeah, I think connect, but probably they weren't very strong connections.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this the other day, the way I've kind of seen my network as my career goes, it's like we're all at one big house party. And I started at the front door and I've kind of made my way to the kitchen and I've said hi and hello, maybe chatted with a few people around the table. And then I got up and, I'm at the couch. So the people that I had really strong connections with in year 1 and year 2 are no longer my tight community. There are a few who I can go to and check in with, but like the larger group aspect isn't necessarily there. The group itself has dissolved. People have moved on to different kinds of careers and things like that.
Yeah.
And so now, I've gone through and there's a whole nother different group, and who knows, in 2 or 3 years that will likely shift and there'll be a different group. So it's not necessarily that I wouldn't avoid connecting with people. I would definitely say, get yourself out there. Because what I do is I collect information from everybody. I want to learn, what did you do? What did you do right? What did you do wrong? What was hard? And I just pick up stories. And then I'm really good at, and maybe other people are, I'm sure other people are as well, at deciding what works for me and what doesn't. So not everything that somebody tells you is going to work for you. Don't believe everything you hear. That's really hard as a newbie.
It's a great point.
Yeah, I wanted to follow everyone's advice, and it came pretty, it didn't take long for me to realize, oh, some people are just full of it and they don't really know what they're talking about.
Or even like, what works for one person can be the exact opposite of what works for someone else. What works for someone at a certain stage of growth is like counterintuitive to what works at another stage of growth. But yeah, having that ability to filter what's going to work for you without riding like more of a roller coaster of like having to like put all your faith in everything that any one person says.
Yeah.
That's a huge, I don't know, is that like emotional intelligence or whatever it is, it's huge.
Yeah. I mean, there were times, some of it is my partner balances me. My husband is very much like, there were times where I'd come to me like, I need to buy this course. This person says that they can make me make this much money. And he's like, hold on, let's wait a minute.
Yep.
Let's think about it, and I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, you don't get it. And some of it he doesn't get. I'm not saying that, but have a somebody who can check you, essentially, even if that's like your in real life best friend or your spouse. Because when you're starting out and you're so ambitious and you're so eager, right? And we're so hungry. And there are really good people who are, creating communities that are genuine. And then there are really good people who are creating communities that just want your $150. So, or more, or a lot more. Yep. Just be wise about that. But, and that's why I think Twitter is great, because you can create the community on your own for free. Yep. It's not something that is curated by someone else. It becomes something that just naturally happens.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And kind of wrapping things up a little bit, bringing it back to the happiness idea. One of the things, just for myself, because I evaluate my happiness based on day-to-day things, I'm very willing to make huge life decisions in order to optimize my day-to-day experience. Even like most recently, moving from Northern California down to San Diego, because kind of a combination of the weather and the in-person like connections we were making just weren't going anywhere, and it just felt like the local vibe wasn't going to work for us long term. And so going within a month, selling a home and moving cross state, because like I felt like this day-to-day routine isn't making me happy, or in that case it was making us happy, not I wasn't the only factor. But I'm curious, like, so for me, my philosophy towards happiness and its connection to day to day translates to pretty extreme action pretty regularly in terms of what's affecting my day to day. I'm curious, for yourself and your own your own concept of what's making you happy, what are the action points that, even though for you realized, hey, if I take an action specifically to make myself happier, it doesn't work out, but are there any particular action points that you've noticed, hey, when I feel like, hey, I'm not really as happy as I want to be, and I do this, which doesn't necessarily feel connected to happiness, it makes me a lot happier. I'm curious what those things are for you, what the action items that the levers you can push to increase your happiness, even indirectly.
Yeah. So, and I've been giving this topic actually a lot of thoughts for about the last 5 or 6 months. It tends to be the day-to-day thing, and it comes out as discipline for me. When I can show discipline, when I'm really unhappy and I'm feeling out of control, more things get out of control. So there's like wine at the end of the night, and there's more junk TV being watched, and there's more junk food being eaten. And it creates a cycle of unhappiness. I start out unhappy, so I have a glass of wine and a pizza, and then I don't feel good, and then I wake up not feeling, it's just a cyclical thing. But when I can be disciplined and say, like, okay, I know that I don't necessarily feel like getting on my Peloton right now, but in 30 minutes, I'll feel great. Like, those kinds of things actually do impact my happiness, the actual way I feel, the mental health, the balance, the calm, better than anything else. We're kind of in the same transition where we are deciding right now to sell our suburban home, to move away from the town that we have lived in our whole lives. Me and my husband both were high school sweethearts in this town, in the suburbs of Burleson, in Burleson, a suburb of Fort Worth. And we are moving out to the country. We're purchasing 100-acre farm.
Amazing.
And we see that as a way to really practice the values that we feel internally. Like we want to be more connected to the land. We want to know where our food comes from. We want our children to be able to like work hard and see hard work. And so while those things may not be fun in the moment, we
Yeah,
know it will give us an overarching, like longer, intense feeling of happiness and contentment, essentially.
totally. So that's super interesting because it sounds like for both of us, our sense of happiness is actually somewhat connected to our feeling of productivity, and feeling like,
Yeah.
hey, I've been productive today. I feel good. I feel happy about this day. Um, and for me, when my sense of productivity is spiraling, I've found that the biggest lever I can push is to lock in routine, like pretty strict routine. So like I
Yeah.
know for me particularly, when I made my workout schedule the same time every day in the morning, it had a huge impact on my productivity through the rest of the day. And similarly, setting in, I like hour by hour schedules never worked for me, but I found that setting up sort of a loose outline that I can
Mhm.
stick to, that's the biggest lever I can push to sort of increase my productivity, and by extension my sense of like happiness in my day to day. I'm curious if you found sort of a similar lever that you feel like, hey, if I'm starting to feel that spiral, I kind of this is what I look to do first, or this is what I look to change the next day or the next hour or whatever, and it sort of helps me right the ship. And so I think that's probably a pretty common thing that a lot of people deal with, is the feeling of this is spiraling, but what do I actually do about it?
Yes. So that brings up two things. The first is just a few weeks ago, I tweeted about it. Like I was feeling like I didn't get anything accomplished today. This was a waste of a day. And then so rather than sitting down and doing a to-do list for tomorrow, which I often do, I sat down and wrote a to-done list for today. And my to-done list, it was like 27 things. And my brain was like, you weren't productive today. You're trash. Like, look what you didn't do. Maybe not your trash, but it was harsh. Like the mental conversation was not good. And after I saw that list, I was like, that's actually a lot of things. Like I taught 3 human beings school. I worked out and I I sent emails. I got a new lead. Like by the time I looked at it and could really evaluate each piece, it was greater than what my brain was telling me, because maybe I didn't get one thing that I was thinking I need to get done.
Yeah.
So if you're stuck in a spot like that, do something like that. Write yourself, like, what have I actually accomplished today? And do every little thing. Like maybe you're like, I took my vitamins, I got in the shower, I washed my hair. Like if you have to have the kind of day where really you're just kind of having a stay in bed and eat cake day, just do the tiny things that you've accomplished.
Yeah.
I saw this and I don't remember where I saw it, so I can't attribute it, but it was basically saying, rather than saying, well, that whole day was a waste, I messed up, whatever your goal was. Maybe my goal was to work out in the morning. Well, I didn't get that accomplished, so the whole day's done. So I'm going to eat cake and I'm going to have pizza and I'm going to have wine tonight. And then, the whole day is trash. Instead, break your day up into quadrants. So you've got like a morning quadrant, a midday, the afternoon, and the evening, and
Hmm.
really allow yourself to reset at each one of those quadrants. So maybe your mid morning didn't go great, but you can always shift and start better for the afternoon time. Like, or maybe, half the day didn't go good. Well, the whole day's not a wash. You still can have your early, your afternoon, and your evening time. I think maybe just being able to one, recognize what accomplishments you have actually done, and
Yep.
then seeing your day split up like that, could be a good way to stop yourself from that spiral, because it's more mental than it is anything else. It's just a mental mindset is what
Yep.
you're stuck in.
So true. And that's actually really interesting too, because the moment you mentioned the list, I had a thought of another piece that I've used as a lever as well. And it's interesting because like it's very similar to what you said, but the focus is like the exact opposite. And I think it's because I'm ADHD. So this slightly different approach to it works better for me. But it's actually like, instead of like, for me, it's not about the cumulative of what I've done. It's more about like things that it's more about the specific piece I need that makes me feel like I moved the needle.
Mm,
And so what I found for me is actually having one thing that I identify at the beginning of each day that's like, if I get this done, today was a win. And I don't really care about anything else. If I do nothing else, if I'm like a complete, if I'm completely like unproductive in every other area, if I know that I got the one most important piece, I'll actually feel pretty good about the day.
yeah.
And so it's kind of cool. It's like, it's almost like it's a very similar, lever, but just depending on how your brain processes productivity could be two different angles there. That's super fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I usually do that as well. When I start out, I want to do 4 things minus 4.
Okay,
Um,
like one for each quadrant, sort of?
Well, just throughout the day. So when I
Okay.
sit down at my computer, I'm like, okay, these are the 4 tasks I want to complete. Actually, I told my dad I'm completely unemployable at this point because I work Monday through Wednesday, maybe Friday if I'm feeling it, and I accomplish 4 things. And when I'm done, I'm done. I get up and I'm like, that's all I need to do today.
Yep.
But that is one of the things that really will attribute to your happiness. Because if I don't do those things, I'm burning myself out. I'm burning myself on both ends.
Yep.
And you can't do that when you're a solopreneur because you're the only one holding the whole ship up. You really have to take care of your health, your mental health. I think that's why these conversations are so important and so synonymous with solo entrepreneurship, because it's all you got. If you're sick, if I'm sick, the business doesn't operate. That's a big deal.
Absolutely. That's so true. Wow, that's awesome stuff. This was super fun. Thanks for hopping on. A lot of really helpful stuff we discussed here. And it's interesting. I love seeing the comparing and contrasting of like things that like seem to be very similar for both of us, and then things where we come at it from a different angle.
Yeah.
Super interesting. I think a wide range of people watching this will benefit from it. Thanks so much for hopping on and talking about happiness and solopreneurship.
Thanks, Jacob. It was fun.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you in the next episode.